Okay, so welcome to the DORE Podcast, where we'll be talking about everything related to real estate investing. So today we've got another special guest. We got Rose with us today from DORE Property Management. Rose, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad you accepted. So Rose, tell us, what do you do for us at DORE Property Management?
Yeah.
What is your role?
I'm the leasing sales manager with DORE Property. So I manage a team of leasing agents and showing representatives. And our goal is to find the perfect tenant for our properties.
Yep. And I think I'll use your words at one point where you kind of said that we were like a matchmaking system where
100%.
It's not matchmakers, but we match tenants with the right properties.
Absolutely.
Right?
We're always looking for the right person, for the right tenant, and the right property as well.
Yeah, exactly. So good stuff. So what if an owner approaches us today and wants to put their house on the market and they believe that it's perhaps not the right time, not the right season? What will we tell them?
Yeah, it's always the right time.
Yeah.
There's always tenants. Yeah. It could be either somebody going on a job transfer. It could be a retired couple looking to downsize. It could be, unfortunately, a breakup in a relationship. So there's people looking for rentals all the time.
Yeah.
So we'll always encourage people, even if it's the off season, we might be more transparent. It may take a bit longer, but certainly it's always a good time to put it up on the market.
Yeah. So whether it's December or July, so your suggestion is always to list when it's ready, when it's available.
Yeah.
And I know as a landlord myself, I'd be like, cash flow is, having a vacant unit is the killer. Obviously, you can never get back the months. So anytime the property is available, it's a nice thing to hear. If it's available, we're putting on the market. You just never know when somebody's looking. Right?
Absolutely.
So, in your experience, how important is it to make sure that when the properties are released to the market, that they're priced according to market?
That's the number one. I would say if you're going to do anything, people have a budget. They're always going to look elsewhere to compare one property to another.
Yep.
Because you have a fancy kitchen, they're not going to necessarily pay more.
Yep.
So definitely being competitive is key and probably the most important component with marketing your property. Yeah,
because obviously, if it's too expensive, and our experience is, you end up doing all the work, you show them the property, and then they end up renting a neighbor's property.
Absolutely.
Right? So you do all the work for nothing.
Yep.
But if it's not expensive enough, then obviously you're not doing anybody any favors. So obviously, when your team goes through the process of evaluating what a unit is worth, it's really to try to maximize the rental income without necessarily being too expensive and detracting people from coming in.
Yeah,
right?
And if you go too low, then people start to think there's something wrong with your unit. So it's very important to price it within the market, based on comparables. Yeah. Right.
And when it comes to pricing, once the price has been set, how important is it for the condition of the property to be in good condition, right?
We love when it shows well.
Yep.
People are visual, so they enjoy when you're showing a property that shows well, it's easier.
Yep.
They envision themselves in that property a lot easier. But that being said, if it's cosmetic, as long as we know what we can do with that property, we can set proper expectations, and some people will see through that.
Yeah. And then we hit the reality, scenarios where you have a occupied unit, tenant gives notice, you go to see it, it's messy, they haven't cleaned, but once they vacate it, it'll be nice and touch up. Like, how would you prepare a prospective tenant that's come to see this unit, whereas that the property is not in its in its peak condition? Yeah. Like, how would we prepare them to make sure that we set a realistic expectation of what they're going to see and what to expect if they decided to move forward?
Yeah, so we usually give a heads up before going in, especially if we've been made aware of the condition, knowing what we are willing to do, or I should say the landlord is willing to do. We're able to also then say this and this and this will be taken care of. And again, it comes back to setting proper expectations, both with the landlord and with the tenant client as well.
Yeah. And in your view, how important is it to be able to make sure that the incoming tenant knows that we're going to look after things? Like, obviously, from a perspective of getting them to a position where if they move in, they have some confidence that if there's an issue or they saw an issue, it can be done. Like, how important is that to make sure that they understand that?
Extremely. You have to make them comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes we'll even insert certain things into the lease,
right?
So that everybody's on the same page.
Right.
Everybody's agreeing to this, and this is what to expect come move in.
That's right. And then from a landlord listening in, obviously, from your standpoint, you've done multiple roles, you've done inspections, you've moved people in and out. You know how important that is and what that relationship is. How important is it from your perspective to make sure that we have a positive move in when tenants move in?
It sets the tone. So as soon as the moment they walk in the house, you have to ensure that they feel comfortable and they have that confidence, because it can just throw off the whole tenancy. So it's very important.
Yeah, no, fair enough. And how do we promote properties? I mean, obviously that changes from time to time, and we adjust our sales depending on what's working, what not. But typically, like how do we promote properties? We get a property up that's available. Like how do we make sure people know that it's available?
Absolutely. So it starts with the sign. We have directionals. We have 12 different platforms that we advertise on, including our own DORE website. And we even go a little step further with our social media presence. We'll do embassy and relocation reach outs as well. And just, again, making sure our pictures and everything is updated.
Nice. And if a prospective tenant's interested in one of the properties that we have promoted, like what's the interaction look like? Because obviously we try to favor efficiency when it comes to communication. Yeah. And so how does that work for us at this stage in the game?
Yeah, so there's different ways to obviously reach out to our team. You can call us, you could email us. The best way to reach our team, though, is to go onto our website. We have an inquire button. You fill out the tenant inquiry form, and it goes right to our team, and they're able to start the process with securing a property for you.
Yeah, and the inquiry button, just to confirm, is we have that on each and every property. So if you're inquiring, you're not doing inquiry at large. Typically, the team would know, okay, if you're inquiring, we know exactly which property it is. You can put comments and so on. So it's much more efficient for the team to be able to move the file forward.
Absolutely. It basically sets up a client profile. So everything links together.
And so when somebody submits the request to get information and say, they want to see the property, what does that process look like?
Yeah, so essentially the form goes to our team, and one of our leasing agents will review the form, and from there be able to either work with you on your application if you've submitted one, or book that in-person viewing as well.
Yeah, and maybe talk to us a bit about the perhaps some of the pre-screening, because I know the team does, and I want to make sure that everybody understands how important this is. Whereas, we've had scenarios where somebody would, they come in, they're interested in the property, and then they show up on site and then realize, oh, we need 2 parking spots. There's only 1. Yeah. So there's a lot of legwork, a lot of experience that we've acquired over the years to try to limit those types of inefficiencies in the system. So maybe speak to some of the common stuff that we do to try to limit bringing somebody to the wrong property or has a special need that is not going to be met with the property. So maybe just give us a bit of when it comes to parking or...
Absolutely. Parking is probably one of the most important things that we ask is how many spots are required. But essentially, we know what our landlords are looking for. We've either worked with them before, we ask the questions, and based on the profile, we can determine whether or not it would be a good fit for the landlord. If we notice something like parking, for example, that doesn't match the listing, we will reach out and try to offer something else. If we have something that offers the 2 spots or some people require an elevator, different types of situations.
Yeah, and I know one of the common ones that I saw at team meetings also was the fact that somebody would inquire about a property and say, for example, it's available for, in 2 months. But they would inquire, the occupancy is in 2 months, but then they still inquire. But then when they submit their application, they need it the next month. Yeah. But it's not possible. Yeah. Right? Because it's occupied. So I know that's one of the, maybe just speak about, because I know that this is a common thing that you guys catch when you go through that process. It doesn't necessarily mean that the tenant doesn't qualify, but it's just that it doesn't meet what they're looking for.
Yeah, it could be occupancy date. It could be the term. Maybe the owner is coming back in a year, but they're looking for long term. Right. Maybe the condo corporation has a rule on size of pets, or there's a lot of different intricacies that we look at, and we want to just make sure before we invest time, not just in ourselves, but with the client, that they are looking at properties that match what they're looking for. And if not, we just move them somewhere else. Yeah, and then just try to find something that makes a lot more sense to them. And because I know there's a lot of work that comes with that, because there was a lot of friction when it came to showing up on site and everybody being disappointed because something that was not caught,
when they're looking at the ad, and all of a sudden everybody's displaced. We've notified the tenant, our leasing agent that's been on site, the new tenant comes in, and next thing you know, you realize, okay, this is not going to work.
Yeah.
Right. So I know that, and then obviously you headed a lot of those initiatives to try to limit that, because you're on the receiving end of that in some cases, right?
Of course.
So it's very efficient that way.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to showing, so obviously it goes to showing agent, and how does that, like, what is the process? Typically it goes to the showing agent. And what does that communication look like after? Like how does,
So if it's deemed a good prospect for that property, and or they're pre-approved for the property, our leasing agent will reach out and book that in-person viewing.
Yeah. And an in-person viewing, so somebody from our team is actually going to show up on site.
Absolutely.
And let them in.
Yep.
Show them around.
Yep.
Give them the tour, and give them an idea of exactly what's involved, and then typically would also go through some of the questions about what they're looking for, trying to make sure that there's, that we're still matching the right people.
Yeah.
To highlighting
the unit, highlighting certain things, but also getting to know your client.
Right.
Understanding what they're looking for.
Yeah.
Making sure it's still a match. And again, if not, we've left a showing and went to another showing to show them something else.
Yeah, exactly. So because obviously we're trying to find the right properties for the right people for right properties, and vice versa. Right.
Yeah.
So what would happen in a scenario where somebody's interested in our property, we pre-screened them, but they can't see it for some reason, they're out of the country, they're not available, but they still want to commit to it. Like what does that look like? I know it's not as straightforward, but maybe speak to that, because I know it's not our preferred scenario, but just maybe speak to that a bit.
Yeah, well, you have two scenarios. You have the new builds. Obviously, we're more comfortable with clients signing sight unseen, because you have floor plans and you have the tools to sign. Okay, sight unseen.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not, we encourage either a family member or maybe a friend that would be available to come on their behalf to view it.
Yeah.
Alternatively, we've done virtual showings, so that could be FaceTime or WhatsApp. It gives us the ability to walk through a property as if they were with us, but also slow down, zoom in, zoom out, and really just give them an experience as if they were physically beside us.
Yeah, because I mean, obviously, if they've not seen it, it's one thing to see the pictures. It's another thing to be in the house, and the last thing we want is to set all of the tenancy up, and then somebody, realizing that something is not what they were expecting, or so on. So obviously, I know it's not a preferred, way of doing it, but we can accommodate, depending on the needs.
Yeah.
Okay. And then when it comes to verifications, I know we can go really, really deep on this, but just for the purposes of people listening in, obviously, we're trying to limit the type, getting involved with tenancies that we feel would be problematic. Or that it's not the right fit, or whichever. So maybe give us some macros for the listeners as to what we do to try to make sure that we get the right people in the right units, and then try to minimize any potential issues going forward.
Absolutely, it's probably my favorite part.
Yeah,
the
I know.
Application process.
Yes.
So ways that we verify stuff. First of all, photo ID, government issued. We need to make sure we know who we're renting to. We go verify employment status, employment income. We want to make sure, again, they have the ability to pay. Landlord references, we actually have a tool that we can confirm who the landlord is to make sure that it is in fact the person they wrote. So that is probably the most important piece. Credit will tell everything. Typically. Yep. And then you have open room tool also that allows us to confirm or validate if they had any issues with the landlord tenant board. That's right.
Yeah, because I mean, obviously, it's too bad that there's so much screening that's involved, because I think from our experience, the vast majority of the people are good, but then you get a few that try to cheat, they lie, they put the wrong information. So we we're not perfect. We're not 100% perfect, but we really try to make sure that we limit involving the wrong people with the wrong properties. And obviously, I think our track record speaks for itself. We've been very good at doing that.
Yeah.
And I mean, we've had chats in the past about readjusting that, and then deciding to stay very robust on what we're doing, even though sometimes it may be a bit more cumbersome. But I mean, obviously, the outcomes are definitely favorable for our clients.
Absolutely,
and it limits the issues. So so good on you.
And transparency.
Yeah,
it comes back.
Yeah.
It's the same with a client that's a prospect tenant or an owner. It's just total transparency. We don't hide behind anything.
Right.
This
exactly.
is the
Yeah, because I mean,
profile.
landlords need to know that I mean, I'm being a landlord. I've been a landlord for over 25 years. There's risks involved.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you go in understanding that there's some risks involved. You're dealing with people, and sometimes we can do all of that work, but then somebody, loses a source of employment, or there's a somebody passed away, or somebody, there's a separation or whichever, and then all of that dynamic changes.
Yeah.
And we could have done everything properly, but still be in a position where there's some challenges. So obviously what we're trying to do is at the forefront with the information that we have, obviously as a team, is you're trying to limit bringing in tendencies that we kind of knew would be problematic at the forefront, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Yeah. So that's good. And then once we go through that verification stage, like what are the few steps that are required, obviously, to get us to to say that a property is rented?
Yeah. So after the application has been screened, it's been presented to the owner is comfortable. The last step is the credit. So we always wait till the end. We want to make sure that the owner is interested and the client is still interested. We don't want to do unnecessary credit checks for no reason. So we do that. Now we're at the stage of sending out the lease. Everything goes out electronically, and at that point everybody signs. You provide a deposit, and now we've secured the property, and all the advertising stops.
Okay, and so the lease, would it be fair to say that depending on the property that the leases can be different? Because I know there's a standard lease, obviously, that we need to use in the province of Ontario, but maybe speak to some of the specifics about certain leases depending on the property.
So the lease stays the same, meaning that it's always the same lease, but we can add certain things into the lease, obviously, that certain clauses, for example.
Something that's specific to that property.
Exactly.
So a condo may have different obligations or rules than, say, you renting out a townhouse or renting an apartment building or renting a basement unit somewhere else, right?
Exactly.
So so the lease, generally speaking, the team will have some specific terms in there that may be specific to that lease. And then you mentioned deposits. So what is because I know province of Ontario typically is we're allowed to have last month's rent prepaid. But before a tenancy can actually move in, what do we expect?
Yeah, so last month rent secures the property, and then we ask the first month rent to be provided to us in order for us to hand over the keys.
That's right. And it's certified funds typically, transfer. It has to be, we're not accepting checks or anything.
So e-transfer, if it's a direct deposit, is basically, we don't do cash,
No, exactly. Fair enough. And I say no checks, not that it's not checks, it's just that
certified.
Obviously it has to be certified or draft or something to that effect in order to release keys. And just, on a general basis, I know this can change from property to property, but and there's generally what like how are utilities handled? Like what is that process? Like what would we expect a tenant to do for utilities, insurance prior to them setting up the time to move in?
So we take care of the water account. So everything gets transferred into the tenant's name. The hydro, the heat and the hydro needs to be transferred by the tenant. But
they need to assume it.
They need to assume it and provide proof.
Provide proof to us that they've taken on the accounts.
And there's also insurance as well.
Yes.
That we require also.
So insurance, just for everybody listening in, they're not necessarily insuring the dwelling. They're insuring themselves as a tenant, and them being liability that they may or may not bring to the property. Hopefully they don't bring to the property, and then to let them move in. So
it's renter's insurance that we require for any amount, as long as they have, it always comes with liability.
Right.
And that's what's important to us, that they have that secured before moving in.
Right. So, and then from there, I mean, obviously we could go really deep into this. I know you and I are very passionate about all these details, and you're even more, detail oriented than I am. So I know we could go deep into it, but anything else that perhaps we should have mentioned on this chat? To the group?
I think I'm going to refer a little bit more to the website just so that it helps people with the process. So obviously the tenant inquiry form is the first step to getting a profile with us, to get your showing and everything going. I will push the pre-approval for the simple fact that it really puts you ahead of a lot of other prospects looking. So in a demanding, very competitive market, it does give you that little push. You can also transfer your application from one property to any other properties we have, so you don't have to keep filling out multiple applications. It's a great tool.
Yeah.
The other thing is our rental match notifier.
Yeah.
So as soon as you sign up for it, you put your criteria. The moment a listing hits our platform, you get notified.
Nice.
Before anybody else
nice.
knows about it.
So you're kind of like a VIP list, essentially. You know, you're getting on top. And I mean, we're not hiding behind the fact that somebody who's been pre-approved and pre-screened and whichever you're on the top of the list when properties are come along, because the work's already been done. So if it's a matter of matching the right people right away, then usually those are the ones that we would cater to at the beginning. So as opposed to trying to do all the work once, you know, a property comes in, sometimes people are involved. They have all of that set up at the beginning. It's just a matter of finding the right property.
Yeah, and you can be a day or two late to get that property. Somebody might have beat you to that property, and it's as easy as just letting your leasing agent know that you would like to transfer it over, and they just transfer it for you.
Too easy. You make it sound so easy.
Et voilà.
So easy. Oh, voila. We're even speaking French. Hey, Rose, thanks for doing this. I know this was a lot of fun, and you were so looking forward to it, but you did a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you
for having me.
Yeah. Talk to you soon. The next one we're doing in French.
Okay.
Yeah.